report or carry out our report.
399 days to the 2023 general election. Members of civil society groups are gathered here to continue their push for the speedy conclusion of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The coalition of civil society groups, led by Yaga Africa, had listed 10 key clauses that should be amended to guarantee the integrity of the election. These issues dominated the conversation at the Citizens' Town Hall, especially the clause that relates to the conduct of primaries by political parties.
Why are you saying the governors are against direct, governors are against indirect? It is totally false. The governors are just saying that provide an option. Don't box ourselves into saying only one option. In case something comes up that option is not possible, are we going to go back to the constitution, or are we going to have some constitutional issues? So that's it.
This country will be better off if we go into the next election with a new electoral law which would enhance the integrity of the preparations and conduct of elections.
Some of the panelists joined the session virtually. Prominent among them are the spokespersons of the Senate and the House of Representatives. However, the conversation took a different turn when the lawmakers were asked about the errors and contradictions highlighted by civil society organizations in the rejected Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
Unfortunately, there won't be much time. There won't be much time to go through all the 17 errors at this sitting. What we are concerned with... Which version are you using? Is it the version of Yaga or the version that is with the National Assembly? Senator... So there must be a reference copy. Senator... You cannot come on national television and undermine the institution of National Assembly without fact and figure. So I challenge you, which copy are you using? Is it copy or is it 5 copy of an NGO? Or the copy with the National Assembly,
the same copy that was made public. It's become a public document now, and we've been able to scrutinize it.
It's not public document.
It's a public fact against you, Senator. You may disagree with it.
Who issued it to be the public document?
I think Senator,
it's a serious matter that I have to take it up.
I must commend the civil society organizations who have been making efforts to make sure that we see things from their own direction. On the 29th of December, I received a letter from Yaga with regards to some of the errors. We're talking about clause 24 sub 4, clause 50 sub 2, clause 64 7 and 8 sub 7 and 8, clause 91 sub 2, clause 107 sub 3, clause 137 sub 3, and subheads, paragraphs 4, 5, 6, paragraph 10 sub 2, paragraph 14 2, paragraph 16 3, and all the rest of them. We are partners in this Nigerian project. So what we have done, immediately I send it to the Speaker to look at.
The conversation is holding a few days to the resumption of legislative sitting for the year. Civil society groups are hoping that federal lawmakers can address the concerns raised by the president in the bill ahead of the off-season elections in the FCT, Osun, and Ekiti states. Well, if there's one theme you can take away from all of the papers today, it is that they're already beginning to set an agenda for parliamentarians who will resume from their holiday recess today. You look at the front page of The Guardian, for instance, Electoral Act override Buhari's veto or delete direct primary PDP governors tell National Assembly. So that's sitting right at the top of the front burner, if there's any such position. I would just to press home the importance of all of this. Now, joining us this morning to see how that agenda is going to be approached or how that's going to be pushed in the House, if at all it is a part of the agenda today, is Honorable Sergius Ogun, who is a member, Constitution Review Committee. You're welcome to Sunrise Early this morning, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for having me.
And we also have with us Mr. Eze Onyekwere, who is a legal practitioner and also a fiscal governance contributor. Mr. Onyekwere, if you can hear us, good morning and welcome to the program. Okay, well, I guess they will work on the audio as we move along in the program, but I'm sure you can see Mr. Onyekwere there. He's almost all set, just needs to fix the audio. But Honorable, you have seen a lot of talk around the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. We saw that letter just before the National Assembly went on recess for the holidays. It was not received very well, it would seem, by members of the National Assembly. Is that correct?
Yes, but it depends on who you are talking to in the National Assembly. Some members felt it was okay what the president said, and they were in agreement with the president. I was in agreement with the president because long before then I had said, this route we are taking is too expensive. We need to we should have allowed the bill to go to the president the way it came to the House, before the clause-by-clause consideration where it was amended, the particular clause was amended. So it depends on who you are talking to in the National Assembly. But I heard there was a lot of noise in the Senate and all that. And I also said then that, look, it's just noise. They're talking about having 73 members, senators or 80-something at a point. I said it wasn't going to happen.
Interestingly, I mean, because if anyone were to look at it, yeah. I'm trying to see your party now. I imagine you're a member of APC or PDP? PDP, exactly. So I just wanted to be double sure, and I know that you haven't crossed the aisle in that regard. So if that is the situation, because a lot of the complaints we heard in the Senate came from PDP senators who felt, I don't know what to say, they felt slighted by the president's refusal to give assent to the bill. But it seems that there has been no consensus, so to speak. This was canvassed mostly, I don't want to say by APC lawmakers, this direct primaries, but it looks like within the PDP, within the ranks of the PDP, this wasn't taken kindly to.
Yes, you just used the word, they felt slighted, that look, this is a bill put together by the parliament and they engaged with the executive, and yet a thing like this will happen. And he could have returned it earlier, But I also think the leadership of the National Assembly or the National Assembly are in cohort with the president in this. Why did you have to wait till the day we were going on vacation to bring it? And the leadership of the National Assembly meets with the president all the time. Was it that he didn't raise this? Was it that they were not aware? But
we saw them it seemed they were trying to campaign. We saw a lot of visits to the president in that period over this particular clause. At least that's what a lot of people thought it was about. I mean, the National Assembly leadership, the governors as well, also saying, no, this cannot stand. There was a line of some sort drawn, and I was wondering on whose side whose side would the president be on?
But it's been said that there's a romance between the parliament and the executive right now. So in the spirit of that romance or relationship, I would have thought the president would have whispered to the leadership to say, look, I will not append my signature to this. Maybe you should go back and do X, Y, Z. But like I said, I think they were in the know. They knew what was coming. But in any case, like I said, I agree with the president in principle because I advocated those same positions. And I think we need leadership in this country. Like I've heard people say, a leader is one that will plant a tree, even knowing that he will not eat from the fruit or she will not eat from the fruit or enjoy the benefit of the canopy that tree will provide. We'll still go ahead and plant it. That is what we need in this country today. But what I have discovered that everybody wants it to happen now in their time for their own benefit. You don't build a nation like that. I am not against direct primaries. If anything, someone like me should advocate for direct primaries because I don't build structures in my constituency. People people are paying delegates for the next election right now, next primaries. I don't believe in such things. So you can actually categorize people like us as paperweight politicians, because we are not dealing with the so-called leadership there. We are dealing directly with the people. Take the dividends of democracy to the people.
So direct primaries would have favored you?
Exactly, but it's not about me. That's what I've always said. It's not about me. I have said severally, for direct primaries, I'll probably be in Abuja here while it's going on in my constituency. Yes, because it's the people, I work for the people, the young people, I work with the young people in my constituency. But when the political parties have the direct primaries, the indirect, and consensus in their constitution. And like the president said, I have also advocated that leave this to the political parties. But I even think the president didn't need to add consensus, because he came in 2014, if you will remember, through indirect. That happened in Lagos. He contested against Kwankwanso and Atiku. And then 2018, it was now direct. So if you had tied everybody into direct, that window would not have been there. The consensus, he was a consensus candidate of the APC in 2018. The direct was just a formality to bring it to pass, just like my governor in Edo State was a consensus candidate during the primaries. But that was indirect. So when everybody agrees that this individual should go through, it becomes consensus. So whichever mode you adopt is just to go through the process, becomes a conventional thing. So that's the point I'm making. Don't lock us in just because of some pecuniary reasons.
So while direct primaries and indirect primaries, the debate continues, the merit and demerit of it, we have a whole Electoral Act. The Electoral Act is more than direct and indirect primaries. Yeah. And there are questions as to what the advantages of the Electoral Act. There are fears that they might not be able to, not just the advantages, the innovations that have been brought to bear in the new Electoral Act amendment bill, that there are fears that they will not see sufficient grounds to be able to test run them before we go into the general elections in 2023. And so there is some urgency that this be considered. As the House resumes today, do you think, I don't know if you're aware, is this going to be part of the agenda which will be discussed today or perhaps during the week?
I don't think so, because our weekly order paper is out. I have seen it. It wasn't listed. So I wasn't expecting it to be there. Yes, because I believe, I don't know, it takes a while to do things like this. But I don't think people are apprehensive because they think the APC is running away from electronic transmission of results. But that is not the issue. Even the 2015, the Electoral Act that was amended in 2015, signed by Jonathan, already gives INEC, in that same section 52 sub 2, the powers to decide on the mode of election. Is there. So I think people are scared that, if they don't do this now, because they are scared of transfer of results, transmission of results, that's what they are avoiding. INEC already has powers to do that, and they are doing it. The Osun election 2018, they did it. I guess the government at the top here, at the center, didn't want it because they were not sure they were going to win the election, and then they leaned heavily on them. And I also think, look, in a constitutional democracy, you cannot afford not to have the rule of law. The way we are going in this country with the courts is very dangerous. I think the courts are kind of overreaching because the INEC has power to do what they are doing today. Even the election in Edo, the one in Anambra, they transmitted results. So has anybody gone to court to invalidate those results, the elections? No. They have powers to do that, and it's in the Electoral Act as amended. So I don't think we should fret about it. If the president decides to return it and they go around doing whatever they want to do so that they will not assent to it, INEC knows that they have powers to decide on whichever mode of whether to transmit electronically or not, and they're already doing it. So no cause for alarm.
Okay, let me quickly bring in Mr. Onyekpere into this conversation, and then we will go to Lagos. Mr. Onyekpere, should I say Happy New Year to you? We've spoken this year already. I think the last conversation we had was over the budget. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
Good morning. I do not know what you make of this. We've been seeing a lot of push on the National Assembly to prioritize the Electoral Act Amendment Bill and handle the business of that legislation as quickly as possible. Do you think that the sense of urgency which we are placing on the National Assembly, is it misplaced?
It is not misplaced. We are talking about the 2023 elections and the need for certainty in the law towards the preparation for that election. So the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is the electoral empire, need to be sure of the exact laws and policies that will undergird their preparation for the general elections. And if you recall, this is not the first time an attempt has been made to amend the Electoral Act since the Buhari administration. And in 3 or 4 instances, there were all kinds of specious reasons given by the president for not assenting to the amendments. So this builds on some form of history why Nigerians are apprehensive that we could continue this back and forth until another reason comes forward, oh, it's too late, it will cause a lot of dislocation in the system. It happened the last time. So that's why Nigerians are saying, please, at the earliest opportunity, amend this law, let it be certain, let INEC and the political parties start working, because it is not a long time away. 1 year is not too far a time for you to prepare for the amendment of the elections coming up early next year. And also, you have this scenario, okay, that everybody is interested in the outcome of the election due to the fact that the country has not been properly managed. So that apprehension, that idea that we want to know what exactly is happening, because even some of the reasons given by Mr. President for not assenting to the law may not be so valid, if you ask me. If you look at the debate about direct and indirect primaries, we've been having a lot of these indirect primaries, delegate system where people are bought off. I personally would have loved the situation where, like the honorable member said, you go back to your constituents and have a feel of how exactly they feel, particularly those from your party, whether you are still popular enough to be able to be made the candidate or flag bearer of your party. Because it is so funny that a political party can come out to tell us that they don't even have a credible members register. How can a political party be hard to say that? And you don't need to say you have 1 day like they do to conduct primaries, mobilize all kinds of people like you have an INEC election. These things, if you have a credible party register, you can even run your voting over a period of a week or 2. And simply all that people need to go to is go to their respective wards. Some even can vote electronically. So I think that was an opportunity for the political parties to refine their systems, produce proper, credible members register, run the system in such a way to test the waters, to know whether this is possible and feasible. And I know that it is possible if the political will is there, because the idea that a governor or somebody sits down and says he controls the lineups of the party, determines who goes to the Senate, determines who goes to the House of Reps, determining who becomes an honorable member at the state level, determining the local government chairman across the local governments in the state, determining the ward councillors. I mean, it's extremely ridiculous. We can't continue to run a system like that and pretend we are running a democracy. So I would have very much well voted for direct, just calling the people, members of the party, to vote. And moreover, why did the president wait for so long? And like the honorable member did say, the president has a very healthy relationship with the leadership of the National Assembly. Why did he wait? All through the time the bill was being considered, there was no executive opinion. And even when the bill was forwarded to him first, one had expected him to have some discussions and not wait until the last day. So that's what is fueling the apprehension that there is an agenda from the presidency and maybe from the APC not known to Nigerians. And that is the unfortunate scenario why Nigerians are a little bit apprehensive and want it done today and tomorrow. Why should it not be on the agenda for the first week? What the hell will the National Assembly be discussing? So everybody expects them, if they miss it this first week, in the second week, they must prioritize it, resolve it one way or the other, so that we put a closure to the issue of the amendment of the electoral bill, electoral law.
Curious, really, Mr. Oyekbere, because it was on this note, sort of, that the National Assembly, especially the House of Reps, I mean, we have the Honorable, who's a member of the House of Reps, that they went on recess. And I recall the Speaker saying that, you know what, they need to speak with their constituents, they don't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater, and also it was on this note that they went on recess. So it's natural that they resume on the note, like pick it up where they left off. And looking at the calendar now, we're exactly 13 months away from Saturday, February the 18th, 2023, which is the proposed date for that election. You have an understanding of the processes in the National Assembly. So if you could shed more light, how difficult or how easy is it to tidy up that bill, send it back to the president for his assent? How long should it take? Because I recall the minority leader last year saying that we can actually still do it today. So is it something that can actually be done in a day, transmitted to the president and sorted out?
If there is a political will and they have listed it in the first week of resumption, I believe that maximally 3, 4, 5 days of work in the National Assembly, they have a clean copy. They have even been assisted by some civil society organizations who pointed out sections that were inelegantly drafted or had some challenges. So all they needed to do was to sit down with their lawyers and their draftsmen, review what these civil society people have already brought to them, and see whether it fits into the scheme of things, and then come to the floor of the House or the Senate and take a decision. It shouldn't be more than 30, 40 minutes business with the hammer. Those in support say A, this one say I, and then you move on and get a clean copy. So it shouldn't take more than 1 week of work if they are serious, and that's the expectation of Nigerians.
Let me just quickly ask our Honorable Sir, just picking up on what Mr. Oyekbere just spoke about in terms of the impression from what they've seen as to whether or not there's a real intention to pass this bill. Because we do remember that the Speaker at the time, when he visited the President, did say, well, the President likes this. Yes, he supports direct primaries. He wants this to be done, only for this to happen. And then you're resuming, and we're not sure if it's going to be one of the key items that will be discussed and addressed immediately the Assembly resumes. What kind of feelers do you get from your colleagues there? Why isn't it as though the National Assembly wants to run with this and address it as soon as possible?
Well, we want to do this like yesterday because, you know, this is more like an election year. Yeah, because very soon everybody will be going home for primaries and you want to know the mode of primaries. But like I said, I think the leadership of the National Assembly know what is going on, and I believe they engaged the president before then. Like you rightly mentioned, the Speaker had met with the president, and within the villa, they said the president was going to assent, and yet the president did not. And like my brother said, Dr. Oyekbere, that we should quickly attend to this. And I think this is very easy and straightforward. What was recommended to the House before the amendment was direct and indirect primaries. Now the president says if you do that, if you return that indirect to the bill and you send it back to me, I will sign. And that shouldn't take more than 1 hour to do. So unless there are extraneous things that we want to reintroduce into the bill. So I think there's commitment on the side of members, at least of the House of Rep, to do something about this like yesterday. It's not been listed this week, but that's not to say it cannot be listed today, because usually, yeah, you have the weekly order paper in view, but when you get in there, they can bring supplementary. So I can't close that door that it should not be considered this week.
Just to be clear, one, we can have a supplementary, some addition to the order paper such that it will come up. And you said that it shouldn't take more than 1 hour. So if it comes up today, it can be sorted today and then eventually transmitted to the president. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
So I wonder what's the thinking then within the PDP. As I said, the minority leader last year said, we can actually consider this today, as at the time that the House of Reps wanted to go on recess, and then send this to the president. So for the opposition PDP, I mean, we know the position of the governors regarding this. What do you have any push you're planning to bring to bear to ensure that this is probably added today, because you have powers in the National Assembly? Are you planning to do that and say, you know what, as a matter of urgency, this needs to be discussed?
Well, in the House of Representatives, you have 360 members that are led by 10 people in the leadership. And this leadership meets, I think, once in a week, and then also have meetings with the Speaker every morning from Tuesday to Thursday when we meet. So as we speak now, I don't know if they have taken a position for the supplementary order paper or for it to be listed within the week. But I strongly believe in the House, I will not speak for the Senate, that we want to do this business like yesterday and put it behind us. So maybe as we resume today, we'll probably be able to reach out to one another and then see what we can do about it. But I cannot speculate right now.
Okay, we'll let you give us, shed a little more light when we return in just a moment. Don't go away. Honorable Sergius, could you shed some light on this matter for us, if you will? Because, I mean, we thought that some of your members had said if you have to debate such matters, they have to have copies of it 24 hours or thereabout before the time. And now, if they don't have copies already, how is it that it can be done today and assented to and debated today and passed, perhaps waiting for the Senate?
Well, we have copies of the bill, unless you're talking about the letter from the president that's basically talking about that we should return the indirect primaries to the bill. Mm-hmm. So I think we are ready, because we went through that bill, then debated it on the floor during the second reading. Members participated in the public hearing, and then it was brought for clause-by-clause consideration. So I think members pretty well know what is in the bill. So we don't need to start reading it all over again.
Okay,
the only contentious issue here is just the,
Yeah, I was wondering, so is there any reason, is there any explanation to any of your members? Have you heard any reason why it's not on the order paper for the week?
You know, like I told you, we have leadership, 10 men, 10 wise men. They lead the House. They lead the 350 of us. So they will be in a better position to know why it's not listed. But like I said, again, it can be listed today. You can have a supplementary order paper where it will come out. But I won't speculate on that now. It's still likely that this will come out this week and it will be handled this week. But if not that, it might also be that they have something to tell us, and we'll probably know about that later today.
Let me ask Mr. Onyekwere, what for you are the implications of the information that Honorable Ogun has just given us? The fact that it's not been listed and may or may not be listed today or this week?
Basically, it talks about the prioritization and how important the leadership of the House thinks that this matter is. Like everybody's been pointing out, in my own experience, I thought it could take them up to 1 week, maybe, for all those issues of mistakes and not proper referencing, that they need to go back and have the experts look at this thing for a couple of days again. But the way he spoke, it's like it's something that will be concluded in an hour or two, or at maximum a day, which is even a very good thing, since we can do it more expeditiously. So the important thing is that it's not a question of what the leadership of the House is thinking in terms of their own priority. They have to read the lips of Nigerians. They have to understand how important Nigerians think this particular law is. So, and that will now give them a sense of prioritization. If they were not happy when they were going for Christmas and New Year break because of the way the president handled the matter, it behoves on them to start with it as a very first thing, resolve it before they can move on to other things. So I don't want to speculate to say whether anybody has any agenda, whether hidden or unhidden. But it is a little bit difficult to understand why it should not be there in the first place on the first day and in the first week of resumption.
Given the work that civil society organizations have done, the consultations with the arms, well, the both chambers of the National Assembly, do you think the CSOs the civil society community might be a little disappointed so far in the process, given the gaps that have been noted that's caused this delay in the first place?
Very well. Not just members of the civil society. The average Nigerian is disappointed with the process so far. And if you look at these issues of the gaps and maybe inelegant drafting or the referencing that was not properly done, this is not the first law that we have seen such a scenario. Indeed, if you go to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, there was a reference in the law that's already signed by the president to an unexisting provision in that law. So you discover that these are the kind of things that shows that maybe those at the back end who should clean up these laws and do the last-minute reading have not been doing their duties properly. So the expectation now is that this is a real matter of urgent national importance, not just those things they stand up in the House and declare something a matter of urgent national importance. This one is urgent. At least they've had Nigerians, what Nigerians said during the time the bill was considered, up till the time the president declined assent. Of course, up to yesterday, the town hall meeting that was organized. So they know the expectations. So for anybody to pretend to say this is not an urgent matter, I don't know where exactly the person is living. If you have constituents, I'm sure they must have inundated you with their complaints about the bill, whether it was passed or not, during Christmas and New Year. So the expectation is that they should make it a priority. And civil society, to a great extent, and Nigerians are disappointed at what has happened so far.
Now, one other issue, Mr. Yekpere, that has dogged our national life is that of trust in government. And government here is talking about just about anything government, including the National Assembly, which is, according to the Constitution, the #1 arm of government. Do you see this action or inaction, so to speak, this step, this information available to us, that the Electoral Act Amendment Bill has not been listed for the week? Do you see it as in any way making worse the trust quotient between government and the people?
Yes, there is a very huge trust deficit, particularly if you recall that the National Assembly, the legislature, is the first arm of government. If there's a military coup today, there'll still be an executive, the judiciary will be there, although they may blow muted trumpets, but the legislature will be the main victim that will be dissolved. Now, the expectation is that they will be on the side of the people at all times. Recall that since the last elections in 2019, we are discussing roughly about 1 year to the elections. Why has the National Assembly not come up with an amendment earlier than they did late last year? The expectation was that the Electoral Act should have been reformed not more than 1 year after the elections. Considering all the observations from INEC, security agencies, election reporters, both national and international, you build on that groundswell, even the petitions that came out from the decisions of the court, and gather all these things together, especially with that momentum when the thing was hot, and just had an amendment of that law, president signs off, and then preparation. Why always wait until the last minute? We are now talking about just 1 year to the elections, and we are still going back and forth. This thing should have been done like within the first 1 year, or at most 1.5 years after the 2019 election. So that trust deficit of saying, what exactly are these guys considering as priorities beyond what Nigerians consider as their own priorities? So it is not good enough on both the side of the National Assembly as well as the president.
Well, I think it's only fair to allow Honorable Ogun to respond to that question about, why wait? You said that this is meant to be done a year after the election. It's about 2-3 years after that election. So, Honorable Ogun, regarding the process leading up to this point, Mr. Oyepere would have wanted it to be way faster, and it looks like it's even dragging into another election. So, why did it take this long for a bill which some have called one of the most important bills in the life of a nation?
Well, I am also surprised that that happened, because this bill was ready for a very long time before it came to the floor of the House for clause-by-clause consideration. If you remember last year, at a point, people were wondering why was the bill not presented for clause-by-clause consideration. And even after that happened, before it was presented, some of us in the House queried why it was not being presented presented to the committee of the whole. Because we checked with some members of the committee, and they told us that, look, they have done all they needed to do. So it was delayed for a while. So that is why when people begin to talk about maybe there is a plan to deliberately delay giving assent to this bill, I tend to want to believe that. Because they had gone through public hearing and were trying to clean up the document to present for clause-by-clause consideration. It took such a long time. I dare say it even took more than 6 months. So like I said, some of us queried or were wondering why the delay. And now, like you are saying, we have done the needful and the president has withheld his accent. It will not take so long. It shouldn't take so long for us to look at it again and then do whatever the president says we should do. It's not because the president is dictating to us, like some will say. Some of us are in agreement with some of the things the president raised. And that should not cause any harm to this bill, if you ask me. If we take such consideration, if we consider such recommendations or suggestions by the president. So it's something we need to do like yesterday and let it be accented to, because the election is around the corner, really.
Well, perhaps by way of giving us an inkling into the workings of the House of Representatives, you said earlier that it can still be listed. I'm just wondering if you could tell us the process of drawing up the list of what members of the House of Representatives have to deliberate on. Whose job is it to put this item on the agenda?
It's the chairman, rules and business, who manages that, but with the instruction of the leadership, largely the presiding officers, the speaker, really. But like I said, the leadership of the House meets every Monday, and I'm sure that would have been discussed yesterday, what should come on the other paper this week. But again, it can still be listed today. It can be listed tomorrow or even Thursday. That shouldn't be a problem.
Well, one of the things that we have been made to understand is that certain bills are sponsored by certain individuals. And so I'm just wondering, the reason I'm asking that question is, whose job or who is supposed to sponsor this particular bill into that list? For instance, we'll say Honorable Sergio Ogun is coming up with a bill on forestry in Nigeria. Then you take it to this individual that you talked about. So whose job is it to make this recommendation that this particular one should be put on the list, given that it was a hot topic just before the House went on recess?
Well, we are not sponsoring a new bill. It's a bill that has gone through the House. So it's just to return it to the other people so that it will be considered. And that's the responsibility of the Speaker of the House. So like I said, it's too early to speculate. It might not be, it's just giving you a preview of what's going to happen in the week. That's the other people that we have right now. Anything can still change there. Even as we talk right now, if the Speaker takes his phone and calls the chairman rules and business, or it depends on what they discussed in the leadership meeting yesterday, it can still get into the other paper. But again, we don't know. It's possible there are some consultations they need to do. Don't forget we are resuming today. Yes, granted that they could have been talking while we were on recess, but we are really resuming today. It's possible we're going to have an executive session today where we are going to deliberate on some of these things, and it will be listed same day, same today or maybe tomorrow. So I don't think we should dissipate too much energy on that. I know as a nation we are anxious to do this like yesterday, because like they say, once bitten, twice shy. This happened in the last House, and the same pattern is playing out right now. But I believe strongly that the president is going to assent to this bill.
Honorable Sergeant, if you even just go back a little bit, the 8th Assembly went back and forth on this same matter. And I think the president did sign it for about 3-4 times, eventually saying, well, it was close to the election, so it was going to upset a lot of things. And then after the elections, Nigerians thought, as soon as the National Assembly resumes, they'll pick it up. That didn't happen until now. Look at where we are. Even before now, after the National Assembly had rejected certain provisions, citing the famous no network, then they came back, inserted these direct or indirect primaries, and people thought, What suddenly changed? They suddenly have network in their areas. And so you'll say it is a fair assessment for people to think, look, going down history and seeing, even in the immediate history, from what we've seen, they don't think that this National Assembly or even the president will assent to this. So it appears as though they all seem to be in this quote-unquote scenario together, just keep whetting our appetites, and at the end of the day, we may not even pass this.
Well, I think the government in power today are afraid of a free and fair elections. That's just simply the reason why in the last house they did not pass it, because people say, well, the National Assembly played into the hands of the president by reordering the order of elections. When the president sent it back, they removed that. I remember that clearly. That was removed, and listed the way they wanted it, and then was sent back. And they claimed there were typos, and that they cannot do anything about those typos, typographical errors. And then that was taken care of. And then went back to the president. And they did not claim that it was too close to the elections. Like somebody said, there's even a judgment in ECOWAS court or somewhere that is stated that the bill can still be passed 2 weeks to an election if all stakeholders agree. So I think they just excuses upon excuses because they are scared that if you have a free and fair election, they will not be able to manipulate it. But that shouldn't be a problem. Like I said, even in this present act that was amended in 2015, INEC can still determine the mode of transmission of results. That power is there, and they are doing it already. They did it in 2018, they did it 2020, and they did it even 2021. So I'm sure there are other things in the bill, not just the transmission of a result. There are other things in the bill that should help our electoral system. But let's not be in a hurry about this. I am sure we will do the needful, and the president will assent to this. But I also urge everyone to speak up. I mean, this is a country. Nation building is a joint task.
The president has spoken about this, has spoken up, as it were, in that interview with Channels Television, saying he will sign it if that issue is resolved. So the president has spoken up. The people have spoken up to a large extent. The CSOs we've heard from there, even people, individuals. So essentially, we're waiting for the National Assembly to speak up on this one, Honorable Ogun. But let me take a point you made to Mr. Onyekwere, because you said that even with the current Electoral Act, which was amended, the 2010, which was amended in 2015, INEC can still, find a way around the electronic, is it transmission or electronic, collation of results. And I'd like to know, Mr. Onyekwere, do you agree with that? Can INEC still, yes, the bill has other provisions, but regarding this electronic transmission, can INEC still do that with the current law that we have?
Very well. At least it's been cited what INEC did in Anambra, what they did in Edo, and what they did in Osun elections. There is a precedent. And if you look at the constitutional powers of INEC, they are quite broad in terms of determining how to do a free and fair election, even without amending the law as we have it today. Once there's that political will among the stakeholders that are running the elections, they can as well go ahead and effect these changes that need to be done. So I don't even want to bank on an amendment of the law as it is today for INEC to do the needful, because they've already started taking those steps. All they need to do is for the political parties and civil society to encourage them so that they can comprehensively review within the powers, the constitutional powers they have, a few other gray areas which they need to make sure, drawing on the lessons of previous elections, to make sure they plug all those loopholes that have emerged, to make sure that what we are going to have in 2023 is an election that builds on the previous performance. It should be better than what we had in the past. And back to what has been said about the president's continuous refusal to sign the electoral acts that we have, bills that we are sent to him. You could see a pattern emerging. Even though the president has given his word that, okay, if you amend this, he will sign. There's nothing that says that if you take it back to him, he will still seek the advice of the Attorney General and other stakeholders who could as well come up with one thing or the other at any given point in time. And the question will be, the argument will be, if we find that there's a mistake or there's an error, we will simply let it go on simply because we did not see it the last time to raise it up. So I think that the duty of the National Assembly is to move as expeditiously as possible, send this bill back to the president so that everybody will now clearly see that the ball is now in the table of the president. If he comes up with any other thing that no one can appreciate, then it should be clear that he's not interested in reforms. Because the popular impression out there on the street is that Mr. President is not interested in a reformed electoral law, because it appears the ruling political party, just like any other ruling political party at previous times in our history, are never interested in reforms, because the gaming of the system, the manipulation of the system, or opportunities to read are much more in the hands of whoever is controlling the levers of power at that time than for the opposition. So it is up to everybody to move them, nudge them gradually to a position where their intention will be clearly seen, so that nobody will have the opportunity, a subterfuge to hide, to say, oh, A or B happened like it did the last time. But it will be clear that if all the hurdles you placed on the path of reforming the law are cleared, and then you still come up with another specious excuse or reason, then Nigerians can now decide what next steps, how they can now approach the government of the people.
Well, Mr. Yepere, while we're at that, there's a lot of talk about the law, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which will become Electoral Act 2021 or 2022. But then there is also the thorny question of the people who will execute that law. And that is also another issue that is gaping. That's the issue around INEC national commissioners. What do you make of all of the conversations going on around the president's list? Some are saying review the list, include this person, remove this person, and all of those things. What do you make of that, and how important do you see that in the scheme of things?
Every law or policy has to be implemented by human beings. The character, quality, the moral upbringing and knowledge and capacity of whoever is going to implement a law will go a long way in determining the quality of implementation. So I think that this is where the role of the legislature is called into play. The president can nominate whoever he likes based on his political leaning or his knowledge of the world affairs. It is the duty of the legislature to now find out if this is a round peg in a round hole or a square peg in a square hole. And where such persons are seen as not being fit and proper persons, or people with political dispositions, or people who, due to one reason or the other, cannot perform optimally in the office, it is for the legislature to refuse to say, well, if this person comes for screening, no, we are not going to approve him or her because he's not fit and proper for that particular position, or based on his background, we don't believe he can deliver. But the challenge is that we still have the National Assembly and the presidency that are having some form of what I would call, before this particular issue came up, an incestuous relationship. So if they do their homework very well, I don't see that being an issue. Some people may be dropped, and the president may be compelled to keep nominating people until they meet the criteria as determined by the elected representatives of the people, who should now reflect what the people actually want for the democracy to thrive.
Quickly, Mr. Yepere, in 30 seconds, do you have questions about any of the people that's been nominated?
Well, it's not for me to begin to discuss persons individually. We have security agencies who should do background work. We have the National Assembly, which should have its own way of reaching out. So I think they are better positioned to look at these issues. To be honest, I've not gone through the list to just take a critical look at the person, but it is the duty of the National Assembly to screen and then make the right recommendations.
All right. Honorable, given the noise that's been going on about this, what are the things that you are looking at as an individual, and what are people to expect from the National Assembly?
Well, I expect, as an individual, I expect that the bill will be represented, and then we would just return it the way it was, allow for the direct...
Just a second, Honorable, I'm talking about the issue of the INEC national commissioners. Given the noise that's going on about that one, yeah, what do you make of do you think there is any value in the conversations going on before the National Assembly even takes a look?
Of course. What Dr. Yokori said, put it rightly. If the security agents would do their bit, because usually you send their details to the DSS for screening. If they would do their work, do the background check on these individuals before sending it to the Senate, and the Senate will do their work and not just tell anybody to take a bow and go, we should be able to expose anyone that has political leaning to the government in power today, or people that are not competent, and then make the right decisions. So yeah, it's a good thing that we are talking about it, and it's also good that. But look at the case of Loretta Onoche. People spoke up, and by the time she got to the Senate, the senators were ready. So that's what I expect us to do always. Don't just leave it to the National Assembly members. We are all stakeholders in this country. The media, the average Nigerian should speak up when you know something. They say if you see something, say something. If you know something, speak up, say something. So if you pass this information across to the National Assembly members, and it's up there, in the country, people will be careful in what they are allowed to go through. So it's not enough to say that they will appear before the senators, and the senators will do the needful. Yes, they should do it. Even the security agents might not know everything about them, because you are talking about background check. They might not have access to every information, but when people talk about it, when people speak up about it, you put the senators in check. So when it comes to them, when it's presented before the senators, they will do the needful. So I think it's a good thing that we are talking about it.
All right, Honorable. So in conclusion, you think that in spite of all of this going back and forth as to amending the Electoral Act or not, if you cite Section 52, INEC can determine the mode of transmission of election results, meaning you think that, yes, they can still handle all of this and it will not be discretionary?
Yes, they can. They have the powers to do that. It's the Electoral Act that was amended in 2015. They can't do it. And they did it before. They did it in Osun. Nothing happened. Now they are still doing it now. They did that in Edo, in Ondo, I think even, they did that in Edo 2020, and in Anambra. Nobody has gone to court. But like I said earlier, I think the courts tend to overreach. So they have the powers to do it as stated in the Electoral Act. So they should go ahead. If the president decides not to assent to this, they have the powers to do it.
Okay, let me just quickly bring this as an aside, and this has nothing to do with the Electoral Act. You're also a member of the Constitution Review Committee. ₦1 billion has been passed in the 2022 budget for Constitution Review. Where are we with that, and what is that money going to be used for?
Well, I think it was there was no money budgeted for it in 2021 budget. No money was budgeted for it. So I think they decided to budget something for it in this budget. But that's a good question to ask. Nigerians are not talking about the Constitutional Review Committee right now. Why are we not working? We are not working. When we were going to go on the long recess in June, we were told that we're going to stay back and work. And some of us cancelled whatever plans we had for the long recess. And then a little later, it was called off. From then till now, we have not met. So why are Nigerians not talking about it? I know we are just...
Why have you not met?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Have you asked questions amongst members and even maybe the Senate as well?
Well, some of us have discussed it, but you see, the way things work, we came back and they started talking about the budget. Now we are done with the budget. We went on Christmas recess. Now we are talking about Electoral Act. By the time you finish this, we might be looking at going into February, March. Because the Constitutional Review Committee will still finish their work, send it to the states. The states will make their own decisions, send it back, and then before we go to the president.
You don't think that much will be done before?
I don't think so. I've given up hope that anything will happen. Just because I believe there was external influence. Because the chairman of the ad hoc committee had told us clearly, the deputy speaker, that we are going to work on this during the recess. Some people grumble they're going to travel, and others say, okay, fine, we will stay back and do it. And just then we got a text that, look, well, we cannot work. You know, so we should ask why we are not working on that today. But Nigerians, we don't do that, you know.
Well, we'll certainly, you know, keep tabs with you and find out whether there's been any progress reports, because $1 billion certainly has been budgeted for it in this and it's been passed. So we know that is law now. But looking at what you're saying, it doesn't look like much will come out of it. But let us wait and see, not speculate on that. Let's thank you very much this morning for coming on Sunrise Daily. Honorable Sedjus Ogun is a member of the Constitutional Review Committee, and you just got an update on that one. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. We've also been speaking with Mr. Eze Onyekbere, who is a legal practitioner and a fiscal governance contributor. Mr. Onyekbere, thank you once again for joining us all the way from Birnin Kebbi via Zoom.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We'll take a break at this point and be back with another topic very closely related, but with another angle and perspective. In just a moment, please stay with us.